Are you serious right now? That is a $500,000 car. You completely destroyed it.
This is going to be a wild ride. And trust me, I never thought I'd be telling this story. But some things, you just can't keep to yourself, you know? The sound, oh man, the sound of that thing. It was like an explosion of orange entitlement. A snarling, supercharged growl that just shattered the 7 a.m. calm every single morning, right on time. It was Trent Hawthorne, the crown prince of our ridiculous Riverwood Heights HOA, and he was tearing through my lawn again, leaving these deep, ugly ruts in the perfect emerald green, like gashes across a silk blanket. I didn't even flinch this last time, didn't have to look, because I knew that sound. I knew that bright orange Dodge Challenger Hellcat red eye, and I knew the exact, smug expression plastered on Trent's 23-year-old face as he treated my property like his personal, high-speed chicane. But this morning, it was different, because I wasn't drinking my coffee to forget it. I was drinking it to savor the moment. I'd finally reached my limit, the absolute, undeniable end of my rope, and the little trench I'd dug and carefully camouflaged wasn't just a physical barrier. It was the line in the sand, the declaration of war, and Trent Hawthorne, spoiled as he was about to learn a very hard lesson about gravity and consequences, a lesson his mother, Veronica Hawthorne, the HOA president, had deliberately failed to teach him. See, to anyone else in Riverwood Heights, it's just a lawn, right? A meticulously maintained suburban cliché, all uniform shrubs and white vinyl fences. But for me, for Arthur Vance, this house, this yard, this specific patch of grass, it was sacred, it was Alara's memory, and that's the deep, honest truth of why I went so far. Alara, my wife, she's been gone 18 months now, and every single inch of this place. We built it together, poured the concrete, planted the maple tree, and this front yard, she called it our green carpet, spending hours out here, fussing over the soil pH, making sure it was perfect, flawless, the first thing we saw every morning. When Trent's monstrous car started chewing it up, it wasn't just property damage. Man, it was like watching him intentionally spit on her grave, a calculated, daily assault on the one physical connection I had left to her laughter and her peace. The first few times, I tried to be the bigger person, the reasonable retired woodworker. I told myself, it's a mistake, he's just careless. But then it became deliberate, a pattern, always at 7:05 a.m., always cutting the corner to save a precious 15 seconds. I finally walked over to their fortress of a house, the one with the 6-car garage and the perfectly manicured imported boxwoods, feeling that familiar, icy knot of grief and frustration tightening in my chest. When Trent opened the door, he looked down at me, literally, like I was some kind of pest, wearing this threadbare athletic shirt and looking like he'd been pulled out of a vat of expensive sleep. "Morning, Trent," I said, trying to keep my voice level, civil. "Look, I need you to stop using my lawn as a shortcut, man. The ruts are getting deep." He didn't even bother to look sorry. He just leaned against the doorframe, a picture of casual arrogance, and gave a slow, deliberate shrug that absolutely sent me over the edge. "Oh, that? Yeah, my bad," he drawled, not an ounce of sincerity in his voice. "It's just turf, old man. Get over it. Buy a new roll, Dad'll pay for it. It's just turf." The disrespect was a physical thing, hitting me right in the gut. I stood there, picturing Alara kneeling in the morning dew, carefully pulling weeds, and this kid was telling me to buy a new roll, completely missing the point that money couldn't buy back the memory embedded in that soil. But I swallowed the rage. I really did, because yelling would just validate his idea that I was some hysterical old crank. I just said, "I understand. Just make sure it doesn't happen again, Trent." And I walked away, feeling the heat of his mocking stare drilling into my back the whole way down their driveway. I knew right then, conversation was useless. It was like talking to a brick wall coated in 24-karat gold. The next morning, 7:05 a.m., it happened again, except this time, he didn't just cut across. He absolutely gunned it. The red eye's supercharger whining, spinning the tires for a good 3 seconds just to throw mud and grass plugs onto the sidewalk. A clear middle finger to my polite request. I watched from the window. And that was the moment Act 1 ended. Man, the moment I transitioned from being the grieving widower trying to keep the peace to the guy who knew how to use a shovel and a level. I documented everything, every single incident, every time, every length and depth of the tire tracks, cross-referencing it with the HOA bylaws, which, of course, the Hawthorne family wrote the book on how to brake. I sent a certified letter to Trent's father, the one who actually paid for the car, detailing the cumulative damage and requesting immediate reimbursement for sod replacement and landscaping costs, along with a cease and desist warning for his son. The father, a busy lawyer, never responded, but his wife, Veronica, the HOA president, she sure did. She called me back 2 days later, her voice dripping with that fake, saccharine charm, like she was talking to a difficult toddler. "Arthur, dear," she cooed, "we're a community here in Riverwood Heights, and we should be focusing on neighborly relations, not, turf wars." She chuckled at her own terrible joke. "Trent is he's an enthusiast. Boys will be boys, honestly. He didn't mean anything by it. Why don't you just accept my personal offer for a gift certificate to the garden center? Let's not make a big deal out of a little mud." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Veronica," I said, my voice low and steady, "this isn't about the money, and it's not about enthusiasm. Your son is deliberately driving a 2-ton vehicle through my deceased wife's memorial garden, after I personally asked him to stop. This is about respect, and frankly, Veronica, this is about the fact that you, as the head of the HOA, are enabling your son's criminal behavior." Her tone snapped immediately, turning sharp, like polished glass breaking. "You watch your tone, Arthur," she hissed. "I am the HOA, and if you think you're going to threaten us over a few tire marks, you are sorely mistaken. You'll get a violation notice yourself if your yard isn't looking pristine by the next inspection." She hung up before I could even reply. That was it. The gauntlet was thrown, and she just confirmed the central conflict. This wasn't Trent acting alone. This was the Hawthorne family, using the entire HOA structure as their shield. I realized then that I couldn't beat them with paper or meetings or polite requests. I had to hit them where it hurt, physically, dramatically, and publicly. The next day, I didn't spend my time on paperwork. I went into my garage, where I usually build custom cabinets, and I pulled out the long-handled spade, the kind Alara used for planting the big shrubs. I spent the entire afternoon, meticulously, quietly, digging a narrow, shallow trench, no more than 8 inches deep and 10 inches wide, running precisely 2 feet inside my actual property line, right along the corner Trent always cut. I disguised it perfectly, laying down a thin sheet of reinforced gardening mesh, covering it with the freshly cut grass plugs, brushing it with loose soil and leaves. It looked exactly like the rest of the lawn, maybe a little greener even, but underneath, it was a sudden, axle-snapping drop. I called it my gopher control system. I positioned my best home security camera, the one with the high-definition zoom and the timestamp, making sure it had an absolutely perfect, unmissable shot of the kill zone. I didn't want this to be a secret. I wanted it to be an undeniable, high-fidelity spectacle. That evening, my good friend and neighbor, Gloria, who lived 2 houses down and hated Veronica Hawthorne more than I did, came over with a covered dish. She saw me wiping the dirt off my shoes on the porch. "You've been busy, Art," she said, raising an eyebrow. "I saw you out there all afternoon, digging. Looks like you're putting in a new sprinkler line." I leaned in, giving her a slow, dangerous smile, the first real smile I'd had since Alara passed. "Something like that, Gloria," I murmured, just making sure I finally deal with a particularly aggressive, large, orange pest that keeps ruining Alara's carpet. She paused, then her eyes went wide with understanding, and a slow grin spread across her face. "Oh, Arthur Vance," she whispered, shaking her head. "You are an absolute menace, and I am here for it. Let me know when the show starts." I just nodded, took the dish, and retreated inside to wait for the morning, the climax of Act 3. 7:05 a.m. the next morning. It felt like time had stopped, every second stretching out like taffy. I stood at my kitchen window, heart pounding, camera phone in hand, watching the clock tick. 7:04, 7:05. There it was. That demonic, deafening roar, the Challenger red-eye appearing around the corner, flying way too fast, its orange paint flashing in the low morning sun. Trent wasn't just cutting the corner, he was attacking it, challenging me, trying to send a final, dominating message. He accelerated right toward my property line, the car leaning slightly as he prepared to cut the turn, and I swear, I saw his head turn slightly, glancing toward my house, probably expecting to see me standing there, defeated. But I wasn't defeated. I was ready. The moment the front left wheel hit the trench, it wasn't a gentle thud. It was a violent, sickening crunch, followed by the heart-stopping, agonizing sound of expensive carbon fiber and metal undercarriage being instantly and brutally ground against the hard, unyielding dirt. The Challenger jolted to a dead stop, nose down, its back wheels suddenly spinning free, digging two useless, massive holes in the ground where my carefully planted grass used to be, now just churning dirt, throwing clods of earth high into the air. The engine screamed, then sputtered, then coughed, and died. Silence. I waited 5 seconds, took a final, deep breath, and then walked out onto my porch, calmly setting my phone down on the railing, already recording. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, arms crossed, savoring the tableau. The beautiful, terrifying, $250,000 machine, now sitting pathetically, completely high-centered, its dignity, much like its front splitter, completely obliterated. Trent scrambled out of the car, his face a horrifying shade of white and purple. He looked at the smoking remains of his car, then at the dirt pit he was standing in, then he locked eyes with me, and the look of absolute, pure, sputtering rage he gave me was the most satisfying thing I had ever witnessed. You absolute lunatic, he shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. What the hell did you do, old man? My car. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my now cool coffee. Oh, that, I said, gesturing vaguely toward the wreckage. That's my new gopher control system, Trent. Just a simple drainage trench, fully within my property boundaries, as certified by the county surveyor's office. I had to do something about those rodents that kept tearing up Alara's turf, didn't I? Seemed like the most permanent solution. Rodents, he yelled, his voice cracking. It's a trench. You dug a trap. This is criminal. I'm calling the police. I'm calling my lawyer. My mom is going to have your house condemned. Already done, I replied, nodding toward the end of the street. Sure enough, 2 police cruisers, red and blue lights flashing, silently rounded the corner. I had called the non-emergency line 5 minutes before 7:05 a.m., calmly reporting an aggressive vehicle speeding and illegally driving on my private property, citing the license plate and predicting the exact location of the damage. Veronica Hawthorne, still in a thin, silk bathrobe and slippers, came sprinting down her driveway, her face contorted with panic. Trent, what is going on? Officer, you cannot tow his vehicle. This man. She pointed dramatically at me, nearly stumbling over the curb. This psycho dug a hazard on his property to specifically damage my son's vehicle. This is harassment. The young officer, Officer Jenkins, a man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, just held up a hand. Ma'am, please. We need to assess the situation. I stepped off the porch and calmly presented my phone to the older, more experienced officer, Officer Thompson. Officer, I have video evidence dating back 3 weeks, documenting deliberate, repeated property damage by this vehicle, including the certified letter I sent the homeowner which was signed for, and footage of the vehicle's actions just moments ago. I have also provided a satellite image with the precise boundary of my property line. The trench, as you can see, is fully on my land. Thompson watched the footage of the Challenger doing a previous, grass-shredding donut, then looked at the car, which was now leaking a small but noticeable amount of oil or coolant. He looked back at Veronica, who was still trying to shout over him. Ma'am, Mr. Vance has done everything by the book, Thompson said, his voice flat. He warned you, he documented it, and he took action on his own private property. Your son drove recklessly onto private property and is responsible for the damage to his vehicle and the property damage he caused here today. We are having the vehicle towed, and we are issuing citations for reckless driving and criminal trespass. Veronica's authority, the air of absolute power she wore like a cheap perfume, just evaporated. Her face went slack, a mask of disbelief. But, the HOA, I'm the president. We'll sue him for creating a nuisance. Thompson just sighed, giving her the most weary look. Ma'am, this is a police matter now, not an HOA one. You'll need to call your insurance company and a very expensive tow truck. And if you attempt to intimidate Mr. Vance further, we will be back for harassment charges. The tow truck arrived 10 minutes later. An incredible scene, the bright orange red eye being winched, scraping and groaning, onto the flatbed, Trent standing nearby, silent now, pale, watching his symbol of entitlement get hauled away like garbage. As the officers were leaving, Officer Thompson gave me a quick nod. Good move, Mr. Vance. That family has been a pain for years. Sometimes, you gotta speak the only language they understand. And that was the final note. The immediate, public humiliation was complete. The aftermath was better than I could have imagined. Gloria, bless her, filmed the entire towing, complete with Veronica's meltdown, and within an hour, the video had been shared all over the neighborhood group, titled, HOA Queen Dethroned, the Challenger versus the Drainage Ditch. The backlash against Veronica was immediate, years of pent-up annoyance over her tyrannical rule finally spilling out. By the time the emergency HOA meeting was called that evening, it was a foregone conclusion. She was voted out of her position by a landslide, effective immediately. Trent's car, I heard, needed an entirely new front axle, steering column repair, and a fresh paint job, an astronomical bill that his father made him pay for by selling off half his crypto portfolio. The Challenger was gone, replaced by a beat-up Ford sedan that Trent drove slowly, meticulously, around corners, never once looking in the direction of my house. I finally got a chance to stand on my porch later that week, watching a landscaper I hired carefully resod the area where the trench was, making it seamless, perfect again. Alara's carpet was healing. But here's the thing, the controversial part, the ending that still haunts me sometimes. Sitting there, watching that turf go down, I felt satisfied, truly, deeply satisfied, but a nagging little voice, one that sounded a lot like Alara, whispered, Arthur, did you go too far? I protected my property. Yes, I stood up to a bully, absolutely, and I single-handedly broke the stranglehold of a corrupt HOA. But I did it with cunning, with calculation, with a deliberate and destructive act of revenge. Was I truly protecting Alara's memory, or did I just use it as an excuse to become the petty, vengeful neighbor that Trent always assumed I was? It felt good. Man, the sweetest kind of victory, but you know, that kind of cold, calculated satisfaction, it leaves a different kind of scar than grief does, one that maybe you don't heal from quite so easily. I got my peace back, but I had to become a warrior to get it, and I'm still trying to figure out if that was worth the cost. So, let me know what you think. Did I cross the line? If Trent Hawthorne was destroying something you held sacred, something tied to a cherished memory, would you have done the same thing? Would you have just taken the money and let it go? Or would you have built that trap? Tell me your thoughts on property rights versus revenge, and let's get a real debate going in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about suburban justice. Because trust me, in Riverwood Heights, things are never quiet for long.